hello, listeners. Welcome again to the Mysteries Unknown podcast for this segment, Behind the Mist, with me, Hunter, the MC. And so, today's two lovely guests that we have today is you've heard them on the Chromatic Roses podcast, where they just share their experiences with Dungeons and Dragons and share their tips and tricks with tabletop RPGs in general. Would you both like to introduce yourselves?
Sure. Hi.
Hello.
My name is Catie. I'm one of the hosts for Chromatic Roses. And she is...
Oh, hi. Hello. My name is Soren G. Hargrove, and I am I'm a co-host for Chromatic Roses. We're so excited to be here. Thanks for having us, Hunter.
All right, so the first thing I always will have my guests do when I bring them on here is share with us all your history with tabletop role-playing games.
Okay. Well, I think we both started in 2018, is that right?
Yeah, yes. Yeah, it would be 2018.
So, yeah. Yep. So we both have been playing for a few years. I think we said, like, between the two of us, like, fish campaigns each.
You could probably say five.
Five, yeah.
We're in
there. Mostly D&D. We haven't done a lot of other systems, but yeah.
Not opposed to them. We've definitely just played a lot of D&D, specifically like 5e.
Yep.
And but Catie and I both also play plenty of like video games that are also like RPG leaning, and I mean other video games, but we're mainly talking about D&D and TTRPGs today.
Exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, we've been playing for about 5 years. I think Catie has been in some longer form campaigns than I have.
Yep.
I've been in a few shorter campaigns, but I'm now in like a much longer campaign actually with her. And that's just like the surface of the iceberg that is us, our experience.
The iceberg that the ship may soon hit at one point. Who knows?
Yeah, you got it.
All right. So, as I said, you both are part of the Chromatic Roses podcast. Kind of share with us what started this concept. What gave you the idea to do this?
This is Catie's favorite thing to talk about.
Well, let me tell you. Okay, so I was talking with my dad. Hi, Dad. Just like a nerdy guy who likes computers and all that kind of stuff. His whole job is computers, so, you know. And I was talking about just like not loving my job, wanting other things to do, not being sure what those other things would be. And he mentioned he also plays TTRPGs, and we talk about like my game and his games when we chat. And he just mentioned like, hey, your table is dominantly female, and that is unique, and that could be something you could talk about on, you know, say a podcast. And I was like, oh, and I honestly had never thought about it that way. Like, I hadn't looked at our group and said, wow, look at all these ladies. It was like just like kind of inherent, I guess. And so when he mentioned that, I was like, oh, wow, yeah, we are mostly ladies. That's crazy. And we're in the Midwest, and so like nerdy hobbies are not like the majority. And so like not only are we playing nerdy hobbies, but it's mostly women playing nerdy hobbies. And yeah, so I then looked to my table and I was like, out of these women, who wants to do a podcast with me? And I knew it was going to be Soren, so I cornered her at a local coffee shop and said, let's start a podcast.
She said, podcast now. And I said, expand. And she said, So I couldn't refuse. But yeah, that is how she became.
And why the name Chromatic Roses? How'd y'all come up with that?
This was we had a couple of very like painstaking like brainstorm like marketing like type nights where we were like, okay, we got to make a logo, we got to think about what we're even gonna call ourselves, like what do we do? And my husband TJ was hanging out with us that day. I think Sam popped in and out that day that I think we were just in your living room processing different things. And we were like, it'd be really cool if we could like find a magic item that like was from D&D that we could utilize in the title to make it fun. We please tell him what the original title of the podcast was going to be.
Well, I give him full credit, but it was I married my DM or something like that.
Yes, yep. Because we both have.
Yeah. And like we also, I don't know. I got the book before even having this idea. I got the book Everybody Has a Podcast Except You by the McElroy brothers.
Yes.
And I read that now that I was like conceiving a podcast. And one of the things that they recommend is taking whatever name you've got and like plugging that into socials and like even Spotify and just seeing if that name already exists in the landscape of the topic you're talking about.
Yeah.
And so we like plugged I Married My DM in. And I think the reason we didn't stick with that was because that wasn't like the crux of our topic. We didn't just want to talk about the fact that
about that we're married to a DM.
Right.
Like that's great and good. Love you guys. But we were like, I mean, if we're making the podcast, like we're the integral part of that story, right? And so we were like, okay, we'll try something else. But it was a cute little jumping off point for sure.
Yeah, and we eventually landed, I think we were looking at a list of magic items and a chromatic rose popped up and I was like, ooh, chromatic roses.
I think it was like TJ pointed it out.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, he was like, how about chromatic rose? And
we were like,
Katie and I both looked at each other and we were like, yes.
Done. And Soren, being the illustrator, like immediately made a logo and I was like, well, forget it.
Well, we're done. There it is.
Yeah.
Okay. So first off, you basically rolled a nat 20 on the charisma check for the DM, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, so what does a chromatic rose do? Just out of curiosity, as a D&D item, because you mentioned it as an item, so now I'm curious to know what it does.
That is a really great question.
And you're also you're giving me more ideas for content here, like on our social pages, because I would love to draw one. And we could just post it as a post idea. That's a side comment, but go ahead, Katie.
I'm not absolutely looking this up on the internet right now because I didn't have it memorized, but here it is.
You wouldn't be a good DM or player if you weren't looking things up on the internet. Just saying.
You're right.
True.
You're right.
The amount of things I have pulled from like pop culture and movies to use for my games is ridiculous.
100%.
So a chromatic rose is a rare item. This magic rose comes in one of 5 colors as noted in the Chromatic Roses table. While a rose is held, it gains a harmless visual effect as indicated on the table. While holding the rose by its stem, you gain resistance to 2 damage of the type associated with the rose's color. If you would take more than 10 damage of this type from a single source, the rose disintegrates, and you take no damage instead. As an action, you can blow the petals from the rose to produce a 20-foot cone of acid, lightning, poisonous gas, fire, or cold as dictated by the rose's damage type. Each creature in the cone must take a DC 15 Constitution saving throw, taking 3d10 damage of the appropriate type on the save, or half as much damage on a successful one. Using this property destroys the rose. So you've got black, which drips acid as the visual effect and provides resistance to acid damage, or if you blow the petals, gives acid damage. Blue crackles with lightning and gives lightning damage. Green issues a green gas, gives poison damage. Red, wreathed in fire, gives fire damage. White, covered with frost, gives cold damage. And ours is pink, so, you know.
It's basically like an OP rose. You either take a tiny damage or you do a bunch of damage.
Isn't pink like actually one of the chromatic dragon colors, I think, in D&D? Because so I bought the Fizzband's Treasury book on D&D Beyond because I got this whole campaign I'm working on around that involves the Dragonlance module.
Neat.
And I'll probably go on that at some point because it involves a sideshow I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
And
cool.
I feel like I can't remember. I know pink's on there. I just can't remember what it is for, like what damage the pink one does.
We're definitely double checking right now.
I also, when I think of how this rose looks, I immediately think of the rose from Beauty and the Beast.
Oh yeah.
And I'm
you just
like,
said
what if how
yeah.
to get this, Rose, is you got to go to the castle and fight the beast, whatever that beast will be in D&D. And that's how you get this item. I just think that would be a cool story to do.
Oh, totally.
Absolutely. And I mean, you said the magic phrase because Katie's favorite like Disney princess growing up was Belle.
It's true.
Continues to be Belle.
I can't.
So yeah, that's perfect. But Katie did just double check the pink dragon description.
I don't know if this is the real one or
Oh,
if this is
man.
just like a description, but pink dragons, an exceptionally rare species which typically lived in underground layers, they were known to be dopey looking and loved making jokes.
Which like
Oh.
it fits.
You're not wrong.
It fits.
No, that reminds me. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, you're fine. I would say we're just a bunch of goobers that like to talk about D&D.
No, I follow this one YouTube channel. They're working on making an animation series for their Curse of Straw campaign they're running. And one of the players is a pink kobold wizard, I believe, is what she is.
That's cool.
That's so cool.
It's one of those himbo kind of semi characters where it's like, it's like she's a cinnamon roll, but could easily kill you if you wanted to.
Yes, I love fembo energy. That's
Yeah,
the best.
Funny because the first thing they joke is one of the characters. I don't know what race he is, but he's like got like a southern accent. One of the guy players in the game, and the short is they just entered Barovia, and they're like, "Yeah, we came out here from the Alamer Woods." And it's like, no, you're in Barovia. You sure you remember how you got here? And then the characters, oh yeah, I remember the Alamer.
Oh.
And everyone just dies laughing. And the DM was like, how long you been holding that? And, oh, since I started the campaign.
Right.
Oh, I just been waiting to drop it.
That's one of the things I love, like throwing in humor when even at like the most tense moments, just throwing in that little side humor just to kind of throw everyone off is just a good trick I learned doing this. And also a good coping mechanism.
29%.
All right. I lost my train of thought here. Give me a second.
That's okay.
Let's see. We're talking about Chromatic Roses, talking about the name and the ideas. Should not be spacing out. It is too early still in the day to be spacing out already.
Nah, you're okay. I'm pretty sure my meds are working their way into wearing off. So you're fine.
All right. So I just talk about just your podcast in general, kind of for the time being, because I especially really enjoyed listening to y'all's episodes that y'all have so far. It's like I wish that we could get them more often because there's always that good nugget you get out of it every time I listen to it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, because especially for me, I really liked the role playing episode y'all did because. So I've never played D&D. I'm more familiar with Powered by the Apocalypse basis games, which is like less. They're more rules light and narrative focused than like the complexity of like the combat and D&D kind of deal. Because basically for Powered by the Apocalypse games, all you need are 2d6 dice for all your rolls, and then there's said stats or things that you can add to that roll to like guarantee like either you fail, you mildly succeed, or you greatly succeed kind of deal. That's how the rules work for the majority of them in general. And the one I've been doing is City of Mist, which is basically gods and monsters existing in reality. So you have these normal day people that then have all these other powers to them, basically. So the milkman is like also secretly the crooked man. The bank teller is possibly Queen Cleopatra. You don't know. And then there's this purple mist that's ever flowing through the city that hides all this from like the normal people, which are called sleepers in the game. And I haven't had a chance like. I'm sorry. What was going to be your question?
That's okay. I was going to say, did you say that like is it it's a game format? You say it's called Power of the Apocalypse, or what was it called?
Powered by the Apocalypse. It was it first appeared in a game called Apocalypse World, where you're trying to survive the apocalypse. And from then on, it became like its own RPG system that you could just add because there's trying to remember, Monster of the Week is powered by the Apocalypse. Evil Hat did a game called Thirsty Sword Lesbians that uses that same system as well, and they also made Monster of the Week. There's a few of them out there that are powered by the Apocalypse-based games. Like there's Masks, which is a superhero-based one, and I know there's a few others out there that I can't quite think of at the top of my head. And then City of Mist is one. And basically, yeah, all you need 2d6 dice. You have like set moves you can do. Like if you're trying to persuade someone, do this. If you're trying to attack someone, do this kind of deal. But like I was saying, Power by the Apocalypse, those games focus more on the role-playing aspect, which is what really got me into doing what I'm doing now, is just because of especially when I was listening to Calamity with Brennan Lee Mulligan, how that style that he narrates in. And that was the first time I actually ever listened to anything Critical Role related, because like I was familiar with them. I knew of Dungeons and Dragons, but I just never got caught up into it.
Yeah.
And then I started running City and Mist games before I started a podcast. Now I listen to Calamity, and that was the kind of the nail in the coffin. Like, yeah, I'm going to start doing a podcast now. And then, even though I made my podcast was not D&D related, it got thrown into that community of D&D and all that. So everyone that follows me or that I talk to is like a D&D podcaster or plays D&D. But it's like I've definitely found like other like tabletop games to listen to, because a lot of people, when you talk to a lot of people now these days, people are actually kind of focusing more on other tabletop games to get to play and all that, especially with the wonderful company that WotC is starting to turn out. So,
yeah.
Oh, yeah. You were saying that Calamity was like your like stepping stone into Critical Role and Dimension 20 and whatnot. And I was just thinking, like, what a lovely intro.
I thought that also.
You served Brennan Lee Mulligan in his finest form, and he did such a great job with that campaign. And it was an absolute delight to watch and experience. So I'm really glad. Did you enjoy it? I know that like it still helped encourage you to do your podcast, but like, did it get you excited?
I did not even pause for a single minute when each episode was done. Like because my job I work at, I'm basically working by myself, just loading trailers. So I just plug in the earphone and I just listen to whatever podcast I'm listening to. And I think like 2 of the episodes had already dropped when I started listening to it, I think. And nice. I was just hooked.
Yeah.
And that last episode, like because I was still listening, because it was towards the end of my shift when I was listening to it, and I was still listening to it on the way home. I was tearing up at the ending of that session because we're all inlaid with the idea that the heroes will win at the end of the day, and that was not the case for this party. Well, especially because Sorry, I was just going to say real quick, because it's tied into the lore of their current Critical Role games that are going on as well. So it's like, and me, I didn't know about that, so I was not expecting that ending to happen. But it's like when you listen to people talk about it, it's like if you're familiar with Critical Role, then you know that when this calamity is happening, this party's not going to see the next day.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Just thinking, I was like, because I watched campaign 1 and then caught up to campaign 2, got to finish campaign 2 with the like live stream, and then Calamity came out and I was like, oh no, this is a doomed party. What are we all getting into? But I like had not thought about the folks who had never seen Critical Role before, who came in on Calamity thinking like, okay, let's watch a D&D campaign. Oh, everybody dies? Okay, cool.
Great.
But my favorite, I think, section of Calamity was, I mean, they're all great, so take that with a grain of salt, but my extra favorite is the, like, bullet time when they're, like, an hour into the campaign and Lou goes, we're still only 1 second in.
Right? Oh, okay. So the thing that sold this thing for me overall when Osmotheus enters, and it's that scene with him and I forget the paladin's name right off the top of my head, but that was like one of my favorite characters was the paladin.
Yeah,
and it's
Xerxes.
Xerxes.
Yes, it's like you're here among all these people, thinking you're the most humble. Who is the most proud man here? This. I've seen artwork of this. It's my favorite quote. To reach down a hand to someone, they have to be beneath you and not beneath somebody.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Brennan Lee.
I got like little bits of chills just because I'm thinking about like that dialogue exchange
and
the
it, like, vibe change that Brennan is able to achieve of like talking in this very like kind of light, almost lilty tone, and then like punch it in with that like a skrelt of sorts. And it's just like, oh.
That's a huge testament to him. As much as I love him as a DM and a D&D type person, his like foundation is in theater and is in like improv theater. So like his ability, even if he had that whole like conversation planned out, like all line for line what he was going to do, his choices as an actor really sell a lot of his DM decisions, and it shows.
And also like, and it goes down with like, I think I know what's wrong. You're trying to atone for me, and I didn't do anything wrong. All the shivers that went down my spine.
Down everyone's. Jeez.
Mm-hmm.
And what's great, so there's a YouTuber out there, I'll have to share this with you maybe later. What he did, he took clips of that scene and then he added in like effects for like magic, and then for that scene with Osmosius, he actually like changed Brennan Lee's voice to have like that demonic kind of voice change. Which kind of just adds in the more aspect of like, if this was happening, this is kind of how it would sound. So
absolutely.
Oh yeah, it's like, this is not who you are. Who am I? Oh, that was what sold it for me, was that scene with with spoiler alert, the tree of names, and it's turning down, and you just see probably this like 9-foot tall demon god just burst out through. And and that was really what sold it for me. And I hadn't even watched Adventure 20 either at the time this happened. I just seen the clips and I knew who Brennan Lee was. So I'm like, so I saw Brennan Lee's doing this game for Critical Role. I'm like, I'll listen to it, see what happens. And my jaw dropped the entire time.
Yeah, they're crazy over there. Those two pieces of media are just powerhouses, and I could consume their stuff all day long.
Oh, and spoiler alert, because I almost forgot. They didn't all die. One survived, just barely escaping. And
it's right.
And all the characters too, like with their own stories. Like you had Sam and Arabia, is that her name?
Abria.
Yeah.
How they played like the divorced couple, how they just made that like such a joy to listen to. You had Marisha's character, who had like was like this high powerful wizard with all these secrets. And then you had not Lou's character. I forget who played the Aarakocra character, being the father Travis, the one being so invested in his work that he forgot about the kids. And let's be honest, Brennan Lee Mulligan role-playing the son was just cute to listen to.
It's so
this
cute.
Is Tappan to Wingspan. Come in.
Oh my goodness. Anytime you mentioned Abria, anytime she is part of anything having to do with Critical Role or whatever, like else, if she's with Dimension 20 or even on her own, like I take my money. I love watching her DM. I love watching her play. She is such a magical presence and such a fun presence to have in your space.
Speaking of a moment in Calamity, when Abria casts Blight.
Oh, mugga.
Oh, yeah. That was nuts. And then, like, the whole party's, like, divided with what's supposed to be going on. And then it's like, oh, no, we're all fucked, basically.
I cast Blight. And she knew it. I mean, Abria knew the world and knew what Calamity was. And so she knew that was the straw that broke the camel's back. She was just like, I have to. There's no Laren would not sit idly by. I have to cast Blight.
I think the character was also partially blaming herself for what was happening, because it was part of what she was doing in the story that was causing a lot of this to happen as well.
Totally.
So I feel like story-wise, as a character, she was probably she thought she was trying to rectify a situation that she ended up causing.
Right. Yep, exactly.
So just how all these backstories just kind of tie in together, it's really great. And then the story of Xerxes' partner and their son, that was an emotional toll for sure.
It's too much. I can't.
It's like, and that scene, like at the end, where it's like you just hear Xerxes, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's just that kind of story, and it's especially with the fact that the heroes don't always see the victory.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's a really cool example. Well, not a cool example. Yeah. a little bit. I think it's just great to see a not happy ending. Like, I, of course, as a player, like, always want, the best for whatever characters I play, whatever parties I join. But, like, to be able to watch something that's like, it ain't gonna go well. It's like, I don't know. It's a different kind of satisfying. And it's also like, but this is like the trauma and the fallout that later is part of a founding stories and for like future characters and stuff. So it's like, I don't know. I love it. It fits in the puzzle right where it's supposed to.
Yeah, exactly.
It also makes me think of, so spoiler alerts for Legend of Vox Machina, so go watch that if you haven't yet. That's a great show. It makes me think of in the newest season 2, when Vex is the girl, correct? The twin?
Vex is the girl, and Vax is Vaxel
Vex
Dan.
and Vex. All right. Sorry, this is as much of the most critical or is watching the clips of this show when that scene happens when Percy opens that tomb and Vex is struck, and then all of a sudden Vax is backing away and everything just changes. And there's the Raven Queen right there.
Oh my god, that scene! I mean, Catie, I know that you've watched the original like play of that campaign, and I've really only watched the animated series so far, and bits and pieces of the original play. But visually watching that scene and watching like Percy basically like deteriorate into himself after realizing like what's happened and just all of that fallout. Oof, it was some good storytelling.
That was crazy at the table, too, because Laura failed a check, basically.
Yeah.
And the Matt, like, looks down at his papers or whatever he has in front of him and looks up and is like, the life leaves Vexalia's eyes. Like that, like, and like, you could tell it was one of those things that I don't think Matt expected Taliesin to not check for traps, you know?
Yeah.
Like, so he hadn't anticipated this being the thing, and
like the one time Percy didn't like check around for that kind of stuff,
and the take me instead, you Raven bitch, like that was a direct line from the table. That Liam said. So it just like, it was crazy to watch there, and it was crazy to relive in animation.
And it's so exciting and cool to see how big Critical Role has become, but to see the translation essentially going from that actual play to being animated, and how much of it was able to just come along for the ride with the animated series. Like Catie just said, that take me instead, that line coming straight from the table, and then like the animators doing such a service like to the scene, and it's so cool. Whoever gets to like be themselves or like be the character they originated like in an animated series when they're like playing D&D.
Right.
So like they were able, they went all in. They went for it, and everyone committed, and it really shows. It makes me so excited.
And Percy, basically the majority of like the first season was all around Percy's arc and his story, getting revenge for his family. So he just went through a whole thing, and then this happens to him on top of what he just went through.
I swear, I just tried to. I just got over my stuff. Do we really have to open someone else's?
It's like, is it Tuesday already?
Yeah, really.
So that's actually a perfect segue to another episode I'm interested in talking about, because I liked it, because I also just thought it was the strangest idea as well, was your character death episode. Just now, the reason I say it's weird from my end, because as I've shared with you and I've shared with people on here all the time, I have no issue with it. So I was diagnosed with autism when I was 4. So a lot of stuff, I see a lot of things more black and white, with there's a little bit of gray, but I'm very black and white on a lot of things.
Sure.
So while I understand like the emotional concept behind like someone losing a character, part of me is still like, because I still understand the fine line between fiction and reality. On top of that, that's the black and white part for me.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, this is just a piece of paper and I'm having a fun game. I expect that there's the opportunity that my character can possibly die when I'm playing. But I also think where you both come from is like you're not expecting it to happen at any given moment. You're thinking, oh, you're going to like we just said, the hero's going to save the day. We don't always expect for that chance where they don't get to see that victory.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think of how I say this. We like go in making these characters with the knowledge that like death is always an option, but it's never what you wish like for your character. So that definitely is tough.
I mean, I think the place that it becomes like those lines between fiction and reality can get blurred. And I think it's true of Soren and I. I mean, I see this happen on Critical Role. I mean, when Vexalia got hit by that tomb, Laura Bailey was in tears.
Yeah.
And so like I think there's this section of human, and I don't know what special ingredients go in to make it, but there's a blurred line. My character that died, Prim, is a part of who I am.
Yeah.
And I, just like anybody who is human, knows that mortality is a thing. And so like I could leave this apartment, I mean, just to get kind of gross and weird. I could leave this apartment, get in a car accident, and die. Like that's just like a thing that's a reality.
Yes, yeah.
But
absolutely.
I don't expect that to happen. I'm not sitting here going like, well, time to go. Here I go.
Yeah.
But I do like I am aware that I have a mortality. So when Prim and Valen situation, like obviously they were in front of an archdevil. They knew that they had mortality, all of these kinds of things. And in fact, their mortality was described very clearly in front of them by this archdevil.
Yeah.
Here are your rules. Here's how this is going to go. If you make this decision and it's the wrong decision, that's it for you.
Bye.
And I think Catie as the character, we kind of talked about this on that episode. Like, Prim is her own being. Prim is a character that lives in my head and also outside of me.
Separate
I am
from
not
you.
Prim, right?
Yeah.
But there is a piece of me that lives in Prim and vice versa. And Catie, the player, was watching her favorite character go through something traumatic.
Yeah.
And was processing Prim's emotions, like improvisationally her emotions in real time. So like I was going through all of that, as well as Catie then going like, no, my special little gal, I don't get to play her anymore.
I worked so hard.
Yeah. And then also like a third layer of like, our friends are not going to be happy this occurred.
Yeah, good God. It's just like, it's so meta. This is too meta.
Yeah. So like, and I will say, like, if Prim were a real human, I don't think that I would have processed as quickly as if Prim were fictional, right? Like, I had a moment of grief and it passed.
Yeah.
If Prim were a real human, that period of grief would have been longer. So, like, the fact that it was fictional attributed to the fact that I was like, okay, her book is closed.
Yeah.
Prim's book is closed. I can still reopen it. I can still go look at it.
Yep.
And I moved on to creating a cool lady that I can't wait to play. But anyway.
Yeah,
I digress.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think that's one thing that I have to remind myself too is I don't even do it purposely. Whenever because I like to make characters on the side for fun, even though I'm probably never gonna play them because I'm a forever DM or GM. I still make characters on the side, and there's always I find I end up putting some aspect of something that either I've struggled with or something some personal characteristics about me. There's something in this character that like I can relate to that just makes me feel more closer when I'm like role playing, and even with some of my NPCs I've done sometimes. It's just
absolutely
really crazy. Okay, so in my newest one shot I did, it's called Of Lies and Leprechauns. And I'm going to put spoiler alert on this now if people listen to this, but I'm probably going to release this episode after the third part, so it won't be as much of a spoiler then. So, see, I tricked my players. I made them believe, there's this. Basically, that whole one shot was based around like the Leprechaun films, those horror films where you have the killer leprechaun. And so I had this little killer leprechaun going around killing people in the city. Well, it turns out this killer leprechaun is tied into this big conspiracy theory. And then there's this one guy that they thought was a friend. Turns out he's a kind of like an anti-hero enemy. And I based him around the Death Wolf from the new Puss in Boots movie. But the whole
excellent.
And the whole idea, basically what he looks like Bigby from The Wolf Among Us, and his mythos that's in him, and he's Fenrir, the Norse wolf.
Oh, okay.
The bringer of Ragnarok. Yeah. Because I still want to deal with that death aspect, but I didn't want to be like, he's just a grim reaper. But I wanted to stick with that wolf. So I thought Fenrir, bringer of Ragnarok that will destroy the gods.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but my thing with him was the reason that he's doing what this character NPC is doing is he sees the corruption and feels like nothing is being done about it. So he's taking it into his own hands. And even though he's taking care of it, innocent people are getting hurt.
Yeah.
In the process. So it's basically like blind justice that he doesn't care who's getting hurt as long as the corruption is weeded out. Kind of deal.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah, and so just because I kind of like I said, part of that was like I see all this stuff was going around, and it's like if only I could do something about it, kind of deal.
Right.
So I kind of threw that in there, and then I made a character. There's this was based off another podcast I listened to, and they did a show around the game Legend of the Five Rings, which is samurais during feudal Japan.
Okay, yeah.
And what they did was they were students trying to become samurais. And it just went on this journey of like self-discovery and like becoming like adulthood type stuff. And I created a character for it, but this character struggled with a lot of anger issues.
Okay,
to where it affected, like, it basically was like he didn't care about the honor that like he was supposed to show people. As it's like he only had him and his own honor for himself. That was all he cared about, kind of deal.
Gotcha.
So yeah,
that's really neat.
And then that also now ties into when you did your digital versus paper episode, talking about which would be preferred. And this was something we discussed. I think it was it you, Catie, that said you like to draw as you're playing?
That's Soren.
That's me.
Soren.
Yes, yeah. Yes, yeah. I super prefer to draw and write and all that jazz.
Yeah, but it was what you had said on the podcast was you're picturing things as you're playing this game and you're drawing it on this paper because it's how your it helps you to visualize. Whereas with my autism, the phrase the phrase is we think in pictures, not in words. So as I'm like listening to someone talk, like narrating, as I'm reading a book, there's a movie I made to describe it just playing in my head, and I'm like seeing all this happen. And I think that's why I go more towards like the narrative role playing aspect of tabletop games and like focusing on combat because I enjoyed that story, like the narrative flow of details just coming off the tongue, how the characters are interacting with each other. And yeah, there's combat here and there, but it's not the main focus when I'm running my games usually.
Yeah, and we actually were talking with Katie's husband Sam the other day, and he was talking about some of his like preparation process for some of our games that we play, and he was saying one of the big things he focuses on is the playlist that's going to be playing during our sessions. And I knew he put a lot of effort into it, but like to hear him speak to it, I was like, well, that's awesome, because all of the music he picks like further enhance that for me, like further encourages the like seeing different scenes and settings and like environments, or just like getting like an overall ambiance vibe of like whatever's going on in the scene. I definitely fully almost always function in like pictures and like movie scene-esque thoughts.
Excuse me. Yeah, so that's just always been my thing. Is just it's also part of the reason. Well, one, no one else was running games. I was trying to be a player originally, so I just snapped my fingers like I was Thanos and said, "Fine, I'll do it myself." So that's why I started running games, was because no one else was running, and just because also, like I said, listening to Brendan Mulligan do Calamity and that free-flowing narration that just kind of just seems to roll naturally off his tongue.
Yeah,
just really resonated with like. Basically, it's like I'm not expecting myself to be the next Brendan Mulligan, but how he narrates and does his style of running games is kind of how I want. It's like how I want to do mine as well, in a sense.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, he's an excellent example.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and of course, I'm not taking anything away from Matt Mercer. He's a great DM in his own right. Everyone's going to be different. Everyone's got their own skills and stuff. Like, because I saw he's going to be doing a game on Dimension 20 now, because every now and then they bring someone new, and Brendan gets to play for a change. So it's always fun to see what characters he comes up with, too.
Same. I'm very excited to watch that.
And it's a prequel. It's a prequel to The Crown of Candy. So right as Brennan Lee Mulligan got the prequel to the main campaigns for Critical Role, they gave Matt the prequel to A Crown of Candy, The Ravening Wars.
It would be so cool.
Abria's playing a Carolina Reaper Pepper.
I remember seeing that Abria was playing, but
yeah, I'm interested in these new tabletop games that Critical Role is going to be both like creating and playing on their show now. I don't know if you saw. It's like there's going to be one that I think one is going to be more like rules light, and then the other one's more like in the complexity of like Dungeons and Dragons and Pathfinder and all that. So
Yep. And they're releasing the last week of the month. They've been taking a recording break. So they're dark on Twitch the last week of the month. But now they're putting in once a month, last week of the month, Candela Obscura campaign.
Yeah.
And that's using one of those rule systems that they are coming up with.
Oh, yeah.
I think Matt's.
I was about to say, I think Candela uses the rules light, and then I think the one that's going to be more like D&D folk kind of complexity related is Daggerheart, I believe, if I remember correctly.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah.
I'm very looking forward to that. I think that'll be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I catch clips and glimpses on YouTube here and there about it, so don't take my word on it for like everything. Just definitely more TTRPGs to check out, because I've definitely been looking into a lot more like tabletop games as well that I want to do, because even though like Sydney Mist was the tabletop that started my podcast, I've always wanted to do more than just that.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's going to be other like kind of rules light games I'm going to run on my podcast. I'm possibly going to do games for other podcasts, and then I'm going to start a sideshow, and it's called I Don't Know How to DM, because the original intention was I've never run a game of Dungeons and Dragons before, so it's the first time Dungeon Master running games. But then I'm switching it up now because WotC is doing their shenanigans once again, and I became a creative partner with a independent TTRPG company called Vindicate Entertainment, and they have one called Other Worlds. And this guy, what this guy did was he was spited basically at one point by Wizards of the Coast. They tried to come after him for a card game he created, so he created a conversion document to convert 5e games to his Other Worlds game.
Oh, jeez.
Nice.
So I'm going to take the D&D modules and I'm converting them over to the Other Worlds, because here's the idea I got, and this was based off 2 podcasts I listened to. Take Dragonlance, throw it into outer space.
Oh, that's cool.
So I also got Spelljammer, and I'm going to kind of throw in aspects from that as well. I'm combining it with Dragonlance to make
that's really, really cool.
What the current name is the Starlance Saga.
Ooh.
It's cool. Now that's very cool. I don't know why I said kind of cool. TJ, my husband, has been super into a bunch of the Spelljammer content, and I think it's so interesting. Yeah, I love the idea of taking like all of this fantasy stuff, all of these D&D games that we play, and throw them in space, because why not? We love Star Wars, don't we? And like we love Star Trek, that kind of stuff. So like why haven't we done this sooner?
So the funny thing is the one that inspired the space aspect was a podcast called The Dungeon Boys, and it's ran by it's a homebrew world created by the DM named Justine, and she created this before like Spelljammer was even out and stuff. So it was space travel and all that. She had all this made before Spelljammer came out.
Wow. Neat.
So, and then Spelljammer got released, but they were like, no, we like our world better, because I've been hearing a lot of stuff about Spelljammer now. Some people like it, some people don't. I'm more focused on like taking those ships and seeing how I can apply them to the travel and stuff with what happens in my game. So
absolutely.
Yeah. And then like I said, I got Fizban's Treasury, and then there's the I forget, the name escapes me right now, but there is one based around Tiamat. There's a module around that, and that's gonna be kind of like the sequel part of the campaign at some point.
Neat.
Yeah, it's just all this. I was looking at all this stuff, and then just listening to the podcast I listened to that inspired me to get in Dragonlance. It's like they're very comedy focused. It's the way I describe it. It's like one of the players is like the single dad, and he's trying to wrangle his 4 like adopted children together the entire time. Is what the party is like.
Yeah. Uh-huh. It's like herding cats.
Yeah, it's the running joke of the game. It's hysterical. They just went through the character didn't die, but they lost a party member. Like he disappeared from that plane and went to another plane during this big fight. And definitely when that scene happened, it was just like, wait a minute, what?
Right.
Yeah.
Like I felt that at some level, which threw me off.
You're like, wait a second, I don't normally no.
So, trying to think about what else we can talk about, because I feel like there's just so much we could talk about, and I've just, like I said, I've been really enjoying listening to y'all's shows and stuff, just taking tips and tricks from you and all that. And have you all played any other games besides Dungeons & Dragons, just out of curiosity, or any that you've been looking up that you're possibly interested in?
So I think I mean, both of us, I'd say we both dominantly have only played on the D&D like format, but I have been interested in just like understanding more about like Pathfinder. I know that that's starkly like similar, but Pathfinder, and then I'm really looking forward to, because Critical Role is kind of leaning into their own platforms, I'm really looking forward to trying out something different, purely because I know I can trust like the Critical Role people to put out something good, one, but also to put out something that I think will be approachable.
Yeah. I've only really played Dungeons and Dragons. My dad, though, plays Fate, and he really likes that. He plays Fate GM-less, so he and his friend, it's only but I know they were looking to get more people into it, but they just like collaboratively tell the story together. Not one of them is in charge.
Oh, I see.
So I know he really likes that. He doesn't have anything against D&D, but he just is a hipster and likes to do things off the beaten path. So he plays Fate. I don't know that we as a group, like as our group of people, I don't know how up for changing systems we would all be. And I only say that because like I feel like our group is starting to finally get the hang of D&D.
Oh yeah.
And throwing us into a new system might be the thing that deters some of our players from continuing just out of like barrier to entry, like not knowing what it's about, not knowing how to use it. So I don't know that we would ever get out of D&D as a group, but it might be one of those things that like
I think individually we might.
Right. Our smaller group might.
Yeah. And I know I think I tend to be the person that likes to watch. I'll do it a bunch first.
Yeah.
I like to observe as much as possible, and then I like to do it myself. So I think, like I said with Critical Role, I think watching them do that on like a nice big screen and watching it either get messed up or work out some of its kinks, I think that will be very beneficial and a good stepping stone for me, because that's the easiest way for me to learn something new.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I know definitely just me listening to just other D&D podcasts and then the tips and tricks shows, kind of like y'all, what you both do, definitely helped me learn how to understand more of like how D&D is played. Pathfinder did a humble bundle. Say that 10 times fast. Did a humble bundle thing. We can get like $300 worth of stuff for like $25, and I invested in that. So I have all this Pathfinder material plus a few extras I got that didn't come with it. And I'm in the running for possibly doing a Pathfinder show. I'm waiting to hear back on that to see what happens.
Cool.
So, yeah, and I already have some ideas because I got the idea where if I want to be either a skeleton, you could do for your ancestry. You could be either like not ancestry. Well, are races and ancestry considered the same thing, or am I talking out my butt about two different things now?
You're not talking out your butt.
Okay.
I think it can just depend. So, like, race could probably be more applicable to literally what color is your skin and or like what. Dang, it can't even like necessarily be country that you're born in. Like, it really can be like, are you humanoid? Are you snake type person? Like, but ancestry could definitely lean into like, were you brought into a family that wasn't your own growing up? Were you an orphan, but you grew up in nobility? But on character sheets, it usually says something like because of your Fey ancestry.
I think it just it depends on the system you're playing.
That's completely fair.
Yeah, I think D&D they use race and ancestry, like Soren was describing it.
Yeah.
Race being, do you look like a snake? Yes or no?
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
and then ancestry being like, more like where your family hails from, kind of a thing.
Because the character I'm possibly working on, if I get onto that game, is I either want to be an android or a skeleton. And yes, you can actually be a skeleton for like your ancestry or race in Pathfinder.
Cool.
And their class would be either cleric or instead of warlock, they're called witch in Pathfinder. But it's the same idea as there was some like fiendish power you made a pact with, and you are now have powers from this demon or fiend or whatever it was you made this pact with. But the idea is they don't know like who they were in their past life. This android or skeleton who I play.
Oh, gotcha.
And that's going to tie.
Really cool.
I'm not going to go into deep detail, but it's going to go more into like some like personal experiences I've had with that. As the game goes on, they're going to start regaining memories from like their past life just over time.
Oh, sure.
That's neat.
That is really cool.
Yeah, so and I think like I couldn't decide between either cleric or witch because it's like it could either be like the deity or the demon takes pity on this person and brings them back. Like they were human at one point, they died. This other being took pity on them, and now they're either in the android body or in the skeleton form.
That's really cool.
Yeah, and so all right. So you actually brought something up that I've actually been wanting to talk about, and I'm going to say we're going to go into a segment that I like to call the hot seat.
Oh, okay.
And I'm going to need you both to bear with me on this. It's going to sound like I'm playing devil advocate, but there's a point to the madness with what I'm about to say.
Okay.
So, in your latest episode, why did we do this show? Basically. And you kind of mentioned it on here earlier at the beginning. You mentioned about like Dungeons and Dragons tabletop RPGs being like male dominated.
Yeah.
Now, I would say from what kind of people play the game perspective, I would agree. But I've only been in this community for a year, and when I look at the people that I'm friends with, who I listen to, because like I said, you two lovely ladies who are making basically making the tips and tricks podcast for people to be able to play. You have the Swords and Sky Mommies podcast, which is an all-female Dungeons and Dragons group.
Yeah.
There's a couple where even though like the DM may be male, the other players at the group are female, and this is like either their boyfriend, their husband, a close friend of theirs that they've done with for a while. Like Gals and Goblins is the newest one. They've been like really successful. There's another one, I forget the name of it now, but it's just these two girls and they're playing as sisters. I think it's like one of their boyfriends is the DM, I believe. There's the Dungeon Boys, which has a female DM and a couple female players or female identifying players.
Yeah.
So I'm seeing more women actually taking part in this community. So I think from that point aspect, I would not consider this like that. I would not consider it like male dominated. And I just think y'all don't give you or like don't you discredit yourselves when you try to say that it's male dominated, because I think when you say that, it takes away from the fact of what you all bring into the community and like what you provide and all that kind of deal. When I think about it, because I've heard a lot of people say it, and I'm just like, but this.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and I think there's a lot to be said for each of our own individual kind of circles and different let me think, like media groups that we kind of surround ourselves with and communities that we go ahead and join when it comes to D&D. I think now at like the 4-ish year mark, I can now say that I am seeing so many women play D&D, and I think it's so cool, and it gets me really jazzed and excited. But when I first started, it was still a lot more of a, and it definitely depends on the group, but I could definitely use the stereotype like it's a boys' club game, at least when I first started. Now that also could pertain to my particular experience, like where Catie and I both live, and how we kind of went through learning the game. The first table I ever played at was dominant male, and here and there it can be, but we certainly, by saying it's male dominated, we certainly, correct me if I'm wrong, we certainly don't discredit ourselves in a way that's like, well, we can't get ahead because it's a boys' game. Certainly not by any means. I think there are a lot of layers to it. It's a big old onion, D&D.
Yeah, I think that there are definitely a lot of female creators in this space. I think there are an influx of female creators in this space.
Just in the last, 5 years.
Yeah. But I also think that is not, like, if you were to look at the population as a whole and not just, like, a cross-section of the population, I think that it's probably, while it's growing in the female population, I think it is probably still dominantly male.
Well, that's what I was trying to say. Like, from like what people play aspect wise, yes, I would agree. It's like more men play than women. Yes, I would agree with that from that point. And I think it would also be safe to say that these TTRPGs originally, the creators did not make them with women in mind. I believe that it was. As we progressed with time, I think people just found a way to make them more appealing to various players in general. Right. And that's why we now see this influx of now we have more female creators and more however people wish to identify, because we are inclusive here. However they want to play. As well. So everyone's people if they don't like how this game, homebrew it to make your own kind of deal. So it's I do agree. I just feel like when people say male dominated, it's I think people usually say with aspects of only males. People try to say the males control everything and only males can play, which I'm no, that's not the case as much now these days, I think.
Yeah, I think the tide is changing. I think that is becoming less and less of a true statement. And it's more so becoming a lukewarm statement these days, I feel which power to it. I'm happy for that to become more of a thing, for more women to take up the mantle and either DM or play more or create content. It's a delight to see.
But I also think in that, I agree. First of all, step one, I agree. Step two, the more I see female creators come out of the woodwork and being active in public, the more I'm seeing them get torn down.
Yeah.
So while it is more common that females are playing, DMing, creating, there is still clearly, and I think this is true of probably any industry, but because we're talking about TTRPGs, I am noticing and I mean, it's on Twitter, it's on Instagram. Ginny D talks about it, how she's constantly berated, generally speaking, by males about the fact that she doesn't know what she's talking about, or that she's taking their hobby, or, you know, like that kind of thing. So that just speaks to me, that tells me that females are infiltrating a boys club. It's a club this is what the boys played, and now females are starting to make ground in it, and they don't like that
and be visible,
right? And I'm not saying that, obviously that's not everybody. Like, we both have husbands who are very kind and supportive,
and welcome us.
We have males in our group that are great.
Yeah, so I personally stay away. I stay as far away from Twitter as I can, because when I started my podcast, I tried to get on Twitter, and it was just all the toxicity. So I'm like, nope. And I stuck with Instagram, and basically over time, Instagram curated itself to what I wish to see and what I wanted to avoid to see. So unfortunately, I don't get to see like all that craziness that goes on. Well, it definitely is there. I do believe that 100% that is there, and that is absolutely ridiculous. That, because my thing is, when I started this, is TTRPGs are for everyone, every race, every gender, every belief.
Yep. Yeah,
and of course,
I agree.
Of course, I've had people try to say, even the evil ones, I'm like, common sense should tell you I don't mean, like, I'm not going to let someone that's like crazy, like far out there be like, no, that common sense should tell you that's not what I'm implying. And because I've seen,
we've talked about that in some of our episodes, where it's like, you know, common sense should tell you like that at any table, whether you're a player or a DM, like, you should feel a certain level of comfort with those people, that you know those people aren't gonna like throw you under the bus at any given moment. Like, there should always be some mutual respect and like understanding there. So yeah, I totally agree with you. Yeah.
And then kind of like in the similar way that y'all were talking about, like when we see the female creators come in, and then they're talking, and you just as like basically they're infiltrating the what used to be the boys club. It's kind of like that I'm seeing now with people leaving Dungeons and Dragons with all the WotC catastrophe, but they're bringing their kind of selves over to other TTRPG communities, and they're not really changing who they are. They're bringing that craziness they had over there over to us, and I see it a lot. Especially in the City of Mist server currently, I'm starting to see it there, and it's just like the gatekeeping, especially, is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And that, I think, all of this idea you could launch this into, I think we can talk about a lot of, I'm going to use the word loosely, but like fandoms. So like, but I also mean like hobbies and like games that we play. Gosh, there is always going to be an unfortunate like community of people who are super negative and super gatekeepy. And the more I think what's been really positive though is to see people like Ginny D and to see people like Abria Iyengar who continue to show up anyway, and who are like, okay, well, like, it's important that, like, you know, maybe another little girl who's like watching this stuff, maybe a full ass adult woman like also sees this content and is like, I can also either play in these games or make that content, and there's plenty of space for all of us.
Yeah. And even though I have yet to like listen to Abria like run her game, because I know she did a couple already, and I definitely need to check them out. I absolutely believe that she possesses probably great skills as a DM herself, with probably how long she's been. Just, if you've been a player for so long, you could easily just transfer that into DM experience alone, in my opinion.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's like, because you gain that narrative ability as you're playing, and then all you do is just turn it around and get behind a screen and be like, I'm going to now project this with like 10,000 other people in the game.
Right. Yeah. She did an EXU like Brennan Lee Mulligan did with Calamity. She did one also. Yeah, she's amazing to watch. And Marisha has also taken a one shot. Ashley Johnson has taken a one shot. And they both did great work there. Yeah. So I mean, we've got some great examples of women in the space who are doing it to it, and they are killing it. And I think that's when we made that episode also, we made a point to end it with our like upswing of like where we continue to see women in the space go. And it's very much like, make the characters you want to make, like DM the games you want to DM, like just live like fearlessly and boldly and
take up
do
space
it.
in the community
Yeah.
and like enjoy it. As long as you're not literally hurting someone,
Right.
go have fun, kid.
Right. Yeah.
Agreed. Everyone, however different they are, is going to bring something new to the table, and I think that's the brilliant aspect of just tabletop in general. It's like, so I did a one shot for the entire Swords of Sky Mummies podcast. So that's 5 ladies all around one table while I'm running them through this new game that they have never played before. That's completely different, and they all picked pre-generated characters because they have like a folio of like 14 different characters that you can pick from, and they just took them and made them their own. Just so well done. And one of them,
cool.
I think, I'm trying to remember, the majority of them played women characters. One of them decided to go with the male investigative reporter that was the Rift of Don Quixote, and she just nailed it perfectly.
That's so cool.
Just the over-top investigative reporter that's kind of like with the 70s porno stash, as some would describe it.
Amazing.
And just was like, literally, the opening scene, this character is giving a speech to himself, and it's like, Lance, you're the best reporter, and you look sexy while you're doing it, kind of deal. She went just balls to the wall with it, and it was amazing.
That's great.
It was just really great. That was really fun. And the story was great because basically what I did was I recreated the Ides of March incident in like modern day with like the death of Caesar and all that. So
yeah, that sounds really fun.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and it was also really fun because I think like I don't forget how many of them were actually teachers. So the history buffs, they immediately realized what was going on, and I was not expecting it. So I'm
really?
like, yeah. So I'm like, oh, they were already kind of figuring out what's going on. Okay. They were metagaming basically without letting it affect the game. So it was still fun. So
that's awesome. That's really funny.
Yeah. But yeah, like I said, I think you both, like, I can't stress it enough how much I enjoy listening to y'all when y'all do these tips and tricks things, and just what you both bring to the community alone is just really great. And I enjoy listening to your episodes whenever you do release them. So
Thank you. Yeah, this is one of our recording days, so we've got a couple more episodes banked and ready to rock. But yeah, it's a ton of fun for us, and I've particularly been enjoying. We have a little segment we like to call the Creation Station, where we build out a character for the listeners, and that's just been a really fun. Just like what's going on right now with us. That's been really cool to dig into.
Yeah.
one thing I just completely remembered that I should have asked y'all before we started this. Do you have that roll table on hand?
Which roll
the
table?
one that y'all like? I'll just pick one at random and let's just have some fun with it. Let's just do a roll table. Because I really enjoy that part of the show as well. Yeah. I should have said that before we started. I apologize. It slipped my mind that I just remembered it when y'all were talking about Creation Station. So
Oh, that's okay. Do you mean a roll table like for building a character or for asking like a question?
no, for the ones you do for asking questions.
Gotcha.
Y'all just do the fun random question thing. Yeah.
Yeah. 1 second. Let's see if we can pull that up. TJ will love that we're getting more use out of this list.
Let me grab my
I was gonna say,
really
do you have
awesome
dice?
really awesome set of dice tray that I got from my Australian buddy. He actually does laser engraved wood stuff. And so actually let me get my metal dice I bought.
Yes, please. Nice, clunky, heavy. It's a heavy answer.
Very heavy. I was surprised at how heavy it was when I pulled it out of the thing.
Okay, so you get to pick. We've got 4 lists. We've got icebreakers. We've got current faves. We've got would you rathers with the D&D flavor, and would you rathers in real life.
Let's have some fun. Let's do would you rathers in real life.
Okay.
Sweet. Okay.
All right. Whenever you're ready.
All right. I got a 9.
9.
Beautiful. A 9. Oh, I think it might start up there.
No, that's 8.
Oh, okay, my bad.
Okay, would you rather be the absolute best at something that no one takes seriously, or be average at something well respected?
Definitely best is something that no one takes seriously. because
Yeah.
it would just be one of those things where people would make fun of me for it. It's like, I don't care. I can still do it better than you.
But I'm still good at it. So honestly, I would. Oh goodness, there's a little bit of like ego play at work for me right now, and I'm like, I think I'd want to be average at something well respected, but then that might hurt.
Yeah.
And I'm already like, there are a bunch of like little hobbies that I have because ADHD, and I tend to hyperfixate on them and become very good at them for a short period of time. So no one really ever takes all of my hobbies seriously, which is fine. Totally warranted. I would rather be average at something well respected, to answer your question.
Oh gosh, I don't know. I probably also average at something well respected, but I mean,
Oh no.
the absolute best though.
Yeah, like if
Like,
you are the
absolute
creme de la Edgar.
You wanna be the very best, like no
Right.
one ever was.
Like you're the Pokemon master of whatever thing it is you delight in. But
Oh,
no one
God.
takes it seriously.
And that just brought a whole new set of emotions with the state of that series now, since they retired Ash. So
Yeah. I love Pokemon, so it's been a rough go.
let's just do one more for laughs. I got 13 this time. Same chart.
Okay, same chart,
Okay.
13. Would you rather use a push lawnmower with a bar that's far too high or far too low?
Mm.
TJ.
Far too high. Get my back straightened out, finally.
There you go, yeah. Stretch it out.
Yeah, I think I'm also far too high. The idea of being hunched over mowing an entire lawn makes me want to die. No, thank you.
I'm so short that how low can it be really?
How low can you go?
How low can it go? And then we'll find
What if it
out
was-
how low I can go.
Well, if it was like one of those like robot mowers are out, but you have to like push that around instead without the handlebar.
Yeah.
You're just pushing behind it the entire time, like doing just army crawling on the ground, pushing it behind you, in front of you.
Yeah, you have to like guide it
There
to
you
make it
go.
mow,
Yeah, yeah.
but it keeps getting off track. That'd be perfect.
All right. So I'm starting to run out of things I want to talk about. Even though I want to keep going, I'm running out of ideas. Is there anything that either of you would like to talk about or ask about?
I don't know. I mean, we've covered a ton, and
Yeah.
it's been awesome talking with you. So
Totally.
thanks for inviting us on.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. We've had a great time.
Yeah, it's like I'm really glad we got to do this. It's funny that you both have Instagram, even though you're like hardly ever use it. So I'm finally glad we were able to somehow communicate to work this out.
Yes, yeah, yeah. And I mean, I think it depends. Channel account, and then we have our own personal accounts. But good gosh, social media is a beast.
Yeah, it's like I'm just so used to like being on Instagram because it's like I don't even have a Facebook page for it just because I didn't want to mess with making a Facebook page. I just have the Instagram account for my 2 shows that I'm doing, and so it's just easier that way. And it's like I talk to a lot of people, and it's easier to kind of coordinate things through because it's like you just have one thing to do. So
Yeah, absolutely.
it's crazy, especially with my it's like that one meme where it's like when the guy tries to solve it, it's like 1 sheep, 2 sheep, it's like purple, red, square, old McDonald, have a farm, hey, Macarena.
Yep, you got it.
All right. So do you want to share your plugs with the listeners before we close this out?
Oh, sure.
Sure, absolutely. Do you want to, or shall I?
I'll do it. Okay, we're on every place you get your podcast, pretty much. Chromatic Roses. We're also on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at chromatic_roses.
Yep.
You can get us at our Gmail. Send us an email at CHROMAROSES@gmail.com.
The eye contact there was strong.
And we upload a new episode every other Wednesday.
Yeah.
as long as all the stars align and we're able to get our recording situation figured out.
Yep.
But yeah, check us out. We'd love to have you.
We love talking with you guys. It's been such a delight to be on. So please come hang out with us on any of those channels. And a big thank you again for having us on.
Yeah, I would definitely say if you're like a first-time DM and you're looking kind of like to explore how you want to like run your games, what different aspects you want to explore of it, definitely check out the Chromatic Roses podcast. They have good episodes that kind of cover like each individual thing for the most part, and there's only probably more to come. So I'm looking forward to hearing the rest of that as well. So
and just as a little side plug, we do have an episode coming up where we interview a DM.
It's true. We interviewed my husband just today.
I was about to ask you, it's the husband.
Yes, it is indeed, and he had a lot of cool insight to share with us. So we learned a bunch, but I'm excited for everyone to get to listen to it.
Yeah.
All right, they nat 20 persuaded him to come onto the show, so
sure did.
And as always, you can find me on Instagram at Mistunk Podcast, MISTUNK Podcast. And if you just want to reach out and email, you can send me an email at mistunkpodcast@gmail.com. And by the time this episode comes out, if you have not yet, listen to my 3-part one-shot of Lies and Leprechauns, which I did with the Fireside Dice D&D podcast. So make sure you check them out as well. Just a little plug right there for all my buddies. So, Catie, Soren, it was really great to come on here and get to have this conversation with y'all. I had a real blast and just glad we got to just shoot out everything and just talk about anything and everything. So,
yeah, it was a ton of fun.
So much
Thank you.
Fun.
Yes.